Hello, my name is Walter McGrory and this is Call of the Runes. Today we're going to talk about Thurisaz. Thurisaz is the third rune of the first Ayat and it represents the sound th. It's a sound we don't have in our alphabet anymore, but it was common in all the runic alphabets. The literal meaning of Thurisaz is thrall. Sometimes the rune Thurisaz is linked to the god Thor, both because the rune itself sort of looks like the hammer symbol and because Thor's name starts with a th sound. We will see that in many rune poems and also in various amulets, the interpretation of troll is much more likely, and that is then therefore the interpretation that I'm going to use. It is a rune of opposition and curses if you are reading this in a reading or if it's used in magic or amulets. So, with that, let's begin. The first rune poem is the Norwegian rune poem and goes as follows. Giants cause anguish in women. Misfortune makes few men cheerful. Misfortune makes sense if you look at the role that Thurs have in Norse mythology. Jotun or Thurs are used for all kinds of monsters, from trolls to ogres to ettins to giants, and not all of them are necessarily giant or big, because some of them are partying with the gods, and the gods are about the same size as the humans in many stories, so it would seem that some giants are also human-sized. And trolls are not always in a human shape. Fenrir, the giant wolf, and the Midgard serpent, who is giant and circles the entire world but is a serpent, are also both examples of Jotun, of giants. So the word giant in Norse mythology is more akin to monster in general. What does tie them together is what they do. The Jotun and the Thurs, they consume, they eat. They're not necessarily evil in the Christian sense, but for example, ettin is the origin of that word is to eat. You can hear it in there, ettin. It's a type of monster. And the same is true for thurs, which comes from to thirst, or is etymologically linked to thirsting. They're consuming. And you can see that because in the end times, the fire giants, the Ragnarok, will consume the world tree with fire. Fenrir, he will devour Odin at the end of the world, and Skoll and Hati, the two wolves, will eat the sun and the moon, and that is how all things will end. The world will end with the Jotun and the Thurs consuming the world. Where humans and Jotun or Thurs appear, their relationship is almost always antagonistic, which means that if a troll or a giant appears in a story where there's also humans, almost without a fail, the giant is an obstacle for the human to overcome. In some cases, it's a little bit gray, but they are mostly not unilaterally helpful, at least, and almost in all cases, an obstacle to be overcome. They were seen as the causes of natural disaster, earthquakes, fires, volcanoes, but also disease and other hardships. Examples of this are the 3 daughters of Aegir. These 9 daughters all have the names of the waves. These daughters are the waves. And Aegir is a Jotun who lives in the ocean, who is in a friendly relationship with the gods. He has them over for parties. But for humans, his daughters swallow sailors into the sea, like the sirens do in Greek mythology. So they call and they, as the waves, they lap up and take sailors from their boats. So in that case, you can clearly see that they are, for humans, antagonistic. We can also see the Canterbury charm. It's from the year 1073 in the Common Era, and it holds an ogre responsible for at least the wound that this charm is meant to heal. The charm goes as follows. Giril, wound causer, go now, you are found. May Thor bless you, Lord of Thurs, Giril, wound causer, against blood vessel pus. So, Giril, the wound causer, is the name of the Thur. you've been discovered. Thor, may you take him away, Girol wound causer against blood vessel pus. The blessing of Thor that is named in this poem is either a blessing for the person who is sick, or perhaps a quick blessing of Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, against the skull of the Jotun, because Thor is the primary god who stands both for the gods and for mankind against the Jotun. So the line "misfortune makes few men cheerful" reference the baleful influence of Jotun and Thurs. So that's a very clear interpretation of this Norwegian rune poem. Thurs, Jotun, make men sick, cause disaster. The first line is a little bit more mysterious because the Jotun in sagas can bring misery to all gods and all humans. So why are women singled out in this poem? There's three options. First, the Thurs rune was a rune that was used in a curse by Skirnir to force Gert to marry Freyr. In the story, Freyr, he sees a giant maiden and he falls in love with her and he wants to marry her. He tells his servant Skirnir, if you get her to marry me, then you can have my magical sword. And Skirnir agrees. So he goes down and he tries many things. He pleads, he begs, he promises things. But in the end, Skirnir goes to her and he says, hey, I have scratched 3 Thur runes in a tree, in the bark of a tree somewhere, and they will make your life miserable forever unless you agree to marry Freyr. And if you do, then I will erase these runes. This is eventually what helps Gert marry Freyr. So it could be that these runes were used as blackmail. And later on, we'll see in a few other charms where they are used in a similar way to curse women who are not giving back the love that men feel that they deserve. So that could be a reason why this rune represents specifically misery for women, because it is used to curse them, to force them to marry men that they don't want to marry. The second reason that this could be is because there's many sagas where the Jotun have tried to kidnap or otherwise coerce the goddess Freyr into marrying them. This is from stealing things from the gods or asking her for as a ransom. So it could be that because Jotun are constantly badgering, in this case Freya, that this is the reason why the Thurs are seen as a specific enemy to women. Marrying a Thur is never fun. Final explanation that is sometimes cited is that the Thurs might have been seen as responsible for the cramps and the pain that women suffer once per month during the menstruation. In a society where it's not completely clear where diseases come from, if disease is seen as being caused by Thurs and women once per month have a painful experience, then it could be seen as that they are specifically singled out as Thurs. There's no definitive proof that either of these three explanations is the true interpretation for this poem. The second poem, the Icelandic poem, doubles down on this though. It says, giants are torturers of women and cliff dwellers and the husband of a giantess. The first line about torturing women mirrors the Norwegian rune poem, so we won't go too deep into that. But in skaldic literature, characters that live among the rocks or in caves are almost always Jotun. And it shows a strong connection to the earth, between thralls and the earth. And you can also see that in that thralls, and you might have read that in the Lord of the Rings book, but it's also true in Norse mythology. If they are hit by the sun, some of them turn into stone. So they are creatures of the earth. And in skaldic literature, a person or a man who lives in the rocks or in caves is often a troll. So that's the connection there as cliff dweller. This makes sense because the earth was first created out of the Jotun Ymir. When in the creation story of Norse mythology, which we touched on in the Urus rune video, the gods eventually slay Ymir and from his body create all the different things in the earth, the mountains, the earth itself. In another saga, Jörð, the mother of Thor, is also a Jotun, and she represents the earth in the saga. So she is the earth, and also Jotun, and also Thor's mother. So in that sense, there's a very strong connection between that the earth is in itself a Jotun. Also immediately shows how close the connection is between gods and Jotun, because Thor is then at least half Jotun. Loki is fully a Jotun. Balder has 9 mothers, which is strongly implied that it is the 9 daughters of Aegir. So the poem doesn't explicitly reference Jotun as being the husband of a giantess, but because of the other lines, we know that it is. But there's also several gods who have a giantess as a wife, including Njord. Odin, as we said, had Thor with a giantess, even though that's not his wife. And so several of the gods have intimate relationship with giantess. There's a very small line about what is actually a god and what is actually a giant. Jotun are sometimes the enemies of the gods and they must fight, but they are also, as I said, romantic partners, and also sometimes they go to their parties. So because of this blurry line, I feel that the most clear distinction between what is a god and what is a Jotun is their role, not so much their lineage. A god is often a character in Norse mythology who represents order and creation. So he orders things and he creates things, and specifically for the way that it's easy to live in for mankind. Jotun, on the other hand, represent chaos and destruction. When Jotun appear, things go out of hand, or at least not in the order that is best for humanity, and things are destroyed, things go bad. So that is the clearest distinction that you have between gods and Jotun. Gods are order and creation, Jotun are chaos and destruction. The final one is the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, and the Anglo-Saxon rune poem goes as follows. A thorn is exceedingly sharp, an evil thing for any thane to grasp, uncommonly severe on all who sit among them. This poem interprets Thurisaz as a thorn and not as a thrall. They might seem far removed, but a connection does exist. One of the grandfathers of Odin, a Jotun, was called Balthorn, or an evil thorn. That's not the only connection, because thorns have a specific role within Scandinavian and Germanic mythology. Besides that, there is a condition called elf-shot, and elf-shot appears in several sagas, and it is caused when nature spirits shoot a small needle made from a thorn into a person. This makes you sick or makes you fall asleep, and this ties back to the idea that Jotun, who are also in their way nature spirits, are the cause of all sicknesses. Another example of this is the Sven thorn, or a sleep thorn. This is a spell that is used to put people to sleep. Several methods of casting are used in the sagas. In Gongu Hrolf saga, a cursed thorn is actually physically pricked into somebody and he falls asleep until it is dislodged. And in the Holt manuscript, there is a set sigil, which you can see here, which also is called the sleep thorn and is used as a sleeping spell. We can see this tie back to the story of Sleeping Beauty, the Germanic Scandinavian influences in that story, where she pricks herself, in this case on a spinning wheel, but then is surrounded by a wall of thorns. So you can see the link there. What is interesting about this story is that a thorn is sharp, but only harms those who grasp it. So it's not necessarily an evil. It's only an evil if you try to move it. Only if you grasp it too hard does it become an evil. Charms and amulets. As we already talked about, in one of the sagas, Freyr sends out his servant Skemir to bring him the giant maiden Gerd to be his bride. He promised riches, he promises violence, he promises disgrace, but all fails. He finally carves the 3 Thur runes into the bark of a tree, and unless Gerd marries Freyr, her life will be hell, he promises. She breaks down and she promises her love to Freyr. Similarly, on a copper plate found in Sigtuna, we found the following curse. Leave under these evil stars, get confused in the mist, your light be destroyed. I speak now 3 thirsts and 9 needs. which is the Naudus rune, and one Anzus rune. Lord of Sanctuary, I call on you. This link, where we see a multiple of a single rune, then the Naudus rune, then the Anzus rune, appears on several amulets. And it seems to be that the Naudus rune, which stands for destiny or fate, is meant to bind the spell into fate, or bind whatever is the first rune into the destiny of the person that this spell is for. The Anzus rune represents Odin, so it's like calling upon the gods to make it through. And the last rune is the rune that you actually want happen, and in this case it is the 3 Thurs. We'll see this combination of a Naudus Anzus plus a third rune in some other amulets that we'll discuss over these videos. Cultural relevance. Jotun are not necessarily evil in the way that demons are evil in the Abrahamic religion, but they are uncaring to the plights of humanity. In the best case, the interests of the Jotun run parallel to humanity's interests, and in the worst case, they run contrary to humanity's best interest. Jotun are in that a raw force of nature. The volcano does not erupt because it wants to harm the humans around it, but that is its nature to erupt. And it will harm the humans when they are there, but the volcano does not care. Another example is Jord, who is maybe a better example here, because Jord makes the plants grow. This helps humans, but it's not for the humans that the plants grow. If a town is in its way an enclave where nature is pushed out slightly, and as soon as humans leave the town, nature will quickly swallow up the town again. If the humans are there or not there, nature doesn't care, plants will grow. And that is the nature of the gods, as of the Jotun as well. Again, there's no real full distinction between what a god is, what an alfar is, an elf, what a landvatir is, a spirit of the land, or what a Jotun is. All of them have instances where offerings have been brought to them. All of them are responsible for certain things that humans are reliant on. And in all cases, they got offerings in hoping that they would cause a good benefit for humanity. So, to conclude, Thurisaz is a rune of destruction. It is a rune of curses. That's what we can see in the amulet, and that's also what we can see in the rune poems. Sometimes people use it as a protection amulet because of its link to Thor, but based on the fact that the way it was used in other amulets is as a curse, I find no evidence that that is a way that it would have ever been used. Thor's hammer symbol itself has been used as protection, but the rune Thurisaz seems to be purely a negative curse rune. As a rune of curses, it is a rune of the trolls and a rune of Thor's thorns rendering flesh. In readings, this is a rune of opposition. For instance, if you would draw this rune together with Tiwaz, the rune of justice, then you would have legal problems. And if you would draw this together with Isa, the rune of ice, then your problems are frozen in place. So on itself, this is a rune of problems, destruction, and opposition. And other runes that surround it might make clear what that is. That was the end of Thurisaz. Next time, I hope to see you again. And until then.